What can I say about the Shedu? It was the first arm cannon introduced in Warframe, but is it actually the best? Well, let's find that out together. Hey guys, welcome back. As always, my name is Leyzar, and today we're gonna be rediving deeper into the Shedu, a mastery rank 13 primary weapon. I'm gonna be having a new player-friendly build for the more casual of Tenno, but fear not, my veteran friends, we also got the Endgame setup with a Riven, Prime mods, Galvanized mods. Take this puppy to steel path, put it through its paces. So with that out of the way, let's jump into the Shedu. Let's begin by checking out how the weapon handles without any mods equipped, and for that, just a couple of our regular free shots. The Shedu is one of two arm cannons in Warframe, and this one wraps around your shoulder, so that makes fashion a little bit on the difficult side, but that's not important. What is important, this one fires a projectile-based attack. Fires a projectile-based attack. Yeah, that makes sense. Now, the projectile itself doesn't have any drop-off. It is constant, but you do have travel speed to this one, so you will have to lead your target depending on the distance between you and said target. Even more so, upon contact, this one explodes in a 6.6 meter radius, and weirdly enough, Prime Firestorm, or Firestorm for that matter, doesn't affect the area of the explosion, which is on the weird side. Now, the weapon has two additional tricks. Trick number one, as soon as you deplete the magazine of 7, boom, big explosion. Radius 20 meters, and Firestorm does apply to this one. Unfortunately, the damage that it deals is basically non-existent, but it does have a guaranteed impact proc, and I know you're gonna want to slap Hemorrhage or Internal Bleeding, whichever is for primaries on it, and okay, Hunter, no, stop it. There's basically no damage there. So no, we are not going to be using Hemorrhage / Internal Bleeding on this one. And the last trick that the weapon has, it recharges by itself. The magazine of 7 is absolutely terrible, but it should recharge the full in 0.65 seconds, 0.4 delay. And considering the rate of regenerating ammo, you're looking at 0.65 seconds total time to get back the 7 magazine. But in actual testing, this comes up to about 1.5 seconds. So there you go. Now, let's have a closer look at stats to see exactly what we're dealing with. Mod capacity stuck at 60 out of 60 if you jumped into actions and you installed that fantastic auto-king catalyst. Only do that if you want a quirky, cool weapon. If you're the type of player, however, that wants the best weapons in Warframe, bro, I just want the best DPS, KPS, big explosion, I just care about flat results. This is not one of the best weapons in Warframe. It's one of the more flavorful weapons in Warframe, but it's not gonna be making any top 10s. Now, how many forma though? 4 to 5, depending on the mods that you have at your disposal. You might want to go to 6 if you have a Riven mod. And speaking about Riven mods, this position is stuck at 2 out of 5. Oh, how terrible! Let me tell you why this is the worst Riven disposition that you can have, because it's still worth getting. It's still worth bloody getting at 2 out of 5. It's barely worth it. So there you go. If you want to max out the Shedu, you will need a Riven, and your priority will be multi-shot, critical damage, and then perhaps an element depending on the build that you're going for. Critical chance is also not bad, especially if you're going for Hunter munitions, because you want to get as many slashes you can out of it. Accuracy is good, fire rate is, well, 2.5 is not bad. The problem is that damn magazine, noise alarming, reload at 0.4, this is just the delay. This is just the delay. Get it? I'm sorry. Trigger automatic, critical chance 25% as a base 2.1, critical multiplier, which again is good. Status chance at 23% with 71 heat damage by default. This is the projectile making contact with a target, and this is your explosion with the 60% damage drop off and the 6.6 meter radius. Put on Prime Firestorm, nada. So there you go. That is that to bear in mind. Now let's check out a standard build. Damage restoration, multi-shot, split chamber, critical chance, and critical damage through this, a critical delay, as well as vital sense. But you are only to be using critical delay with a minus 20% fire rate if you're going for a bit more fire rate through vial acceleration or speed trigger or something of the sort. Do not go for shred or prime shred, because you see, explosive projectiles and punch through doesn't really mix all that well in general in Warframe. Now, there are some exceptions to this rule, but we're not going to be getting into that now. This is your standard everyday setup. Essentially, the damage comes from Hunter munitions because it applies slash to your target, and the vital elemental combo made between Malignant Force and Rhyme rounds will be applying, essentially buffs up the damage over time from the slash. You get it? That's what vital does. That's what vital is so fantastic. So vital plus slash equals love. That's all you need to know if you're more of a newer player coming to the game. We're going to be testing out the weapon so you can see the actual performance with no Warframe buffs or synergies whatsoever, so you can see exactly what the weapon is really capable of. MR13 for the Shedu, and I think that level 120s is a bit overkill, but never mind, let's go Corrupted Heavy Goons level 120. I doubt an MR13 is gonna see these targets. At MR13, these are only accessible if you go to sortie free and you spend some time in the third mission, something like a endless. Regardless, I'm gonna go for headshot, and as I told you before, the damage will be coming from the procs that you put on your targets, essentially damage over time. The weapon feels good, and that's mostly because of the fire rate. Now, the way you can play with a weapon, don't go to 0 necessarily. Don't generate that area of effect explosion because the damage that it deals is not really all that relevant. However, it does have one bonus effect. That area of effect essentially removes the damage resistances from Sentience and from the Shadow Stalker. That's the main trick of the Shedu. Essentially, this is a counter-sentient weapon, something of the sort. So do bear that one in mind. But honestly, there's really not that many sentient targets for you to shoot, and not that many at level 13 or MR 13. So do bear that one in mind. And that's pretty much it for the new player portion of the guide. Please treat this build as a jumping off point. This is your base. Yes? Now, if you're more of a endgame player, you got Galvanized mods, Prime mods, you get yourself a Riven, you got Arcanes, you got essentially everything, yes? In the Excellent slot, you can always use something like Terminal Velocity to increase the projectile flight speed. For flat damage, you can Incineration plus Primary Merciless. As an alternative, you can go for something like Deadhead. However, keep in mind that Deadhead only procs off of a headshot kill, so the actual contact damage needs to kill your target, otherwise you're up a creek without a paddle. And considering that most of our damage is going to be coming from the procs, then might as well go for Merciless. We're going to be using Prime Cryo rounds instead of the 60/60 cold mod. We're going to be using Prime Bane of the Corrupted. But I know you freaking hate Bane mods, and you know what? I'm not a fan of them either. You can go for something like more multi-shot if you want, or some additional fire rate to make the weapon feel a bit smoother. Now, once upon a time, we could build the weapon in a certain way to get infinite ammo. That's gone. But if you want more uptime out of the weapon, what you can build is reload speed with Prime Fast Hands or normal Fast Hands, and the weapon will become a bit more usable. From my point of view, just simply learn to stop firing before the magazine goes to 0. That's how I usually use it, and you get pretty good results like that. And of course, Galvanized Chamber instead of the normal version. We're going to talk about Rivens just a tad later. Oh, also, instead of the Bane mod, you can use a Riven, or instead of the flat damage from Serration. However, since this is a high level build, quote unquote, we're going to be activating the Steel Path modifiers and bumping up the level of the enemies to 165, so it makes for a more endgame setup. Yes. All right, so this is still the weapon on its own 2 feet. We're not going to be using anything in terms of Warframe buffs or synergies, and even like this, the weapon is capable of shredding targets. Keep in mind that my flat damage right now is not what it needs to be, right? Because I only got 1 stack of Primary Merciless, or 0 stacks in this case. Look at this. So it takes a while for the weapon to ramp up, especially considering that you don't have any additional fire rate. Now, it would be very easy for me to pop Harrows 2, get yourself fire rate and reload speed, which incidentally is exactly what this weapon needs to actually shred your targets. But this is the kind of performance you can expect out of the weapon. After you got yourself a couple of stacks, and as long as you keep an eye on that magazine capacity, you should be able to kill even high-level Steel Path-enabled targets like so. Take a look at the buffs, and take a look at what you managed to proc on your targets. Look at that. The area of effect is pretty significant upon contact. Unfortunately, the one that the weapon generates upon reload isn't all that much. But again, if you're willing to throw enough Warframe buffs and synergies at it, you can even make that one work. But at that point, as a wise man said, pro tip, use another gun. So there you go. That is actually true. You're better off using another weapon. But look at that. Murder that pack of Corrupted Heavy Goons 165 with the Steel Path modifiers on. Now, my friends, I know what you're saying. Dude, standing still targets. Yes, I know. But before we go to Steel Path, we're going to be putting in the Riven. Now, what should we replace? The flat damage or the Bane mod? I know you guys hate that. So we're just going to go like so. We're going to take out the Bane mod, and we're going to be repeating the test just so you can see what a dispo, what is that, 2 Riven can make. It's multi-shock, critical damage, critical chance, and a harmless negative. And by harmless, I think it's something like minus infested damage. Headshots once again. Ah! We're into orange territory now. Thank you so much, critical chance. So yes, look at that. With no stacks, I might add. No stacks whatsoever of Merciless on. Look at that. If you have trouble keeping up your stacks of Merciless, keep in mind that you have more duration out of a single stat from Deadhead. However, that one will be harder to proc. You're gonna have to kind of align exactly the contact damage with the enemy so you get yourself that proc. In my opinion, Merciless is still the way to go, especially considering that in normal missions, not all enemies will be Corrupted Heavy Gunners 165 with the Steel Path modifiers on. So there you go. And that's the kind of performance you can expect out of the weapon, realistically speaking. Now, if I was to throw some Warframe buffs at this, it will become a whole lot better. But then again, so will a toothpick off the steel path. Welcome to the Void, my friends. We're going to be using Citrine because Citrine only slightly colors the performance of the weapon. Now, I could be using other Warframe buffs, but again, I feel I'm doing a disservice to the weapon. Then again, when it comes to steel path, you're basically free to do whatever you want. Obviously, these will be level 120 corrupted, and as you can see, the weapon absolutely chomps through them with no issue whatsoever. We're talking about one-shots at this low level, however. I can also apply Citrine's buffs, and I can get myself a whole lot of crit if I'm going to be hitting the crystal that the enemies will be affected with. But this is the kind of performance you can expect. Honestly, the Shedu for normal level steel path can absolutely nuke house without any issue whatsoever. If you're looking for level cap, then no. If you're looking for level cap, then you're gonna have to get yourself some more Warframe buffs, and I would advise you remove enemies' defenses with something like, well, Horrify. Was it Horrify or Terrify that he had? Either way, out of the two, or even better yet, my favorite ability when it comes to the helmet system, and no, it's not Gloom. We're talking about Pillage from Hildrun. That's a fantastic synergy with essentially everything. On the other hand, I always feel like that's a shallow argument. Dude, if you remove the defenses of a target, then what are you left with? A whole lot of health? Essentially a toothpick or a mighty sneeze will be killing off mostly anything. So there is that to bear in mind. Obviously, this will not apply to special targets such as Demolists and Acolyte. Now, I can keep staying here for about an hour and nothing will change. I can keep shooting these fodder enemies, which will get absolutely destroyed by my magnificent Shedu. But I think you're gonna be better served by an Acolyte showing. Yes, yes? Yes, yes. Galvanized aptitude does not apply its damage benefit to the explosion, which is why it's not present on the build. If it did, then it would have been. Now, keep in mind that it's only half not functional in the case of the Shedu, because the contact damage will still benefit from that Galvanized aptitude damage buff, and the status buff still applies to everything, yes? Now, the damage layout on this one is about 55% for the contact, and like the rest of it for the explosion, so do bear that one in mind. Many times, however, you're just going to be getting the damage explosion if you're just going to be aiming for the feet or for the walls or something of the sort. So there is that also to take into account. Since when? I had no idea. Thanks, Zar. That's not true. It's not since always. No. Initially, when Galvanized Aptitude came out, it was a little bit unclear what exactly it worked on and what it didn't. And because the buff, or the mod better said, never particularly states anywhere in the game that it does not apply its damage benefit to area of effect, or to explosions to be more specific, because it does apply its damage benefit to big projectiles, like for example the Arcaplasmor's projectile. So you can call that one AoE. Players were a bit confused for a couple of months until Digital Extremes came out and said, hey listen, this is not supposed to work on explosions, and whatever it did work on explosions, we're going to be removing that functionality or something of the sort, yes? So the confusion is more than warranted and understandable. Don't be that guy that be like, oh bro, don't be that asshole. Well, there are plenty of people like that. You don't want to be that asshole, trust me. Just simply explain kindly what works and what doesn't. We got a flash, gents. We got a flash. Must be Santa Claus. Now, for the purpose of demonstrating the weapon's actual capabilities, I'm not gonna apply crowd control unless the guy is gonna kill me. I can apply crowd control with Citrine, obviously, if I want to. Where's the guy? I thought it... There we go, there's the guy. Say cheese! Are you dead? I don't know, he's taking damage, but I'm not seeing him. Oh, hi! And of course, I'm using that explosion as well. That's pretty easy, honestly. Killing the Acolyte was kind of run-of-the-mill easy mode. And I haven't even consistently fired at the target. So, there you go. And I do believe, my friends, that is pretty much it. There's still one section that we can tackle, Warframe buffs. And for that, we're going to be using my favorite weapon buffer frame, Lady Mirage Prime. Corrosive projection against heavily armored targets, but please don't feel forced into this one. Simply use the aura of your choosing depending on your build. Theoretically, at least, your Warframe build should be a whole lot more impactful and important than your gun build. Although sometimes I do feel this is more gun frame than Warframe, which is a fantastic thing if you're me. Arcane Avenger is a fantastic arcane to use. This is one of the most powerful arcanes in the game right now, 45% critical chance. This is a bonus additive after simply stacking on top of what you already have. Make sure you get an R5 for this one. And you can also go for Arcane Velocity to get yourself some fire rate, but that one will only be applying to secondary weapons. The primary version is called, what's it called again? Velocity? No, that was Velocity. Acceleration. There you go, and this one actually applies to primaries but excludes shotguns. You can also go for flat damage, but normally at least one of your Warframe slots should be reserved for your Energize or your armor, essentially the actual Warframe build. As for companions, you can go for a little Sentinel. Just make sure that on that little Sentinel's weapon you get the 4 Vigilante mods to increase the critical chance. Yes, 20% chance to enhance critical hits from primary weapons. Or what you can do is get the Panzer Volpa Phyla to get yourself some vital procs, in which case you can drop vital on the weapon, or maybe use a secondary epitaph, or maybe use Grendel's thing, what's it called? Nourish, yes, to apply vitals to the enemies, and you then can skip it on the actual weapon build. Now with the clones active, we should be able to get a bit more survivability. Look at that. Beautiful, fantastic, glorious. Now, these targets normally can absolutely shred you. Keep in mind that while Mirage is an extremely powerful weapon buffer frame, the most powerful in the game right now, she does not excel at survivability. And if you are to build her into survivability and try to make her survive, then, well, she's just simply gonna lose some of her power. So there is that to bear in mind. Not only that, Eclipse is anything but reliable. Yes, so the Sun element damage, the Shadow element A mitigation, and all whatnot. We still are asking Digital Extremes to give us a, whatchamacallit, for this one. A toggle for Eclipse, that would be absolutely fantastic. But more on Mirage some other day. For now, let's draw some conclusions regarding the Shedu. This may not be one of the most powerful weapons in the game, definitely not. However, it still holds its own quite nicely. It is a very flavorful, quirky, gimmicky weapon, which I do recommend as long as you're not that kind of player that needs the absolute best in the game. There are other builds possible that take advantage of the rest of the kit that the Shedu has, that is that area of effect explosion, but to me those are a little bit too gimmicky and rely too much on your Warframe buffs. For the time being, I'm still giving the Shedu a full thumbs up. Oh, and one last thing, if you're thinking about the Bubonico is simply straight up better, so if you're looking for the same arm cannon experience in Warframe, but you want more, then definitely go for the Bubonico. Link in the cards right now for a full and detailed guide on that one. As always, my name has been Leyzar. Thank you guys so much for watching. Like, share, and subscribe only if you enjoy the content. You can also catch me on Twitch, Facebook, Twitter, all the usual places. Oh, and if you love what I do and you want to help me keep making it, consider supporting us via Patreon. There's going to be a link in the upper right portion of the screen right about now. But until next time, my friends, bye-bye.